people now have food, and
Yes.
we have a decent amount of people here. Might be some late stragglers, but we'll take care of that. Just so you do know, we are recording audio and screen, so, and we'll upload this to YouTube later.
How long have you been recording?
I just started just a minute or so ago. I will cut off all the intro except before this. If you gave away any
Yeah,
trade
make sure you
secrets,
trim
I will
some of
keep
that.
those. So welcome. This is our third meeting. Third meeting. I had to do the math in my head real quick. I just want to let you know real quick before we start, there is an opportunity, and hopefully my, oh, there we go. My system wants to be goofy today. Hopefully, there we go. In August, down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, there's a conference going on called PowerShell Saturday. I've been in contact with the organizer of this. His name is Little John. Yes, that is his real legal name.
He showed me his driver's license.
Yeah, Jake can attest to this. So they're running this conference down in Chattanooga, so if you want to go, feel free. The link is right here in the PowerPoint deck. This is uploaded on GitHub already as well with the link. Tickets are, I think, like $150 for a Friday and Saturday conference, plus they have specials on hotels. I'm going down for both the Friday and Saturday, just to support Little John, because without his support and prodding, this wouldn't be happening tonight. So you can thank him as well for that. But Jason Helmick and Jeff Hicks are the two main speakers of that conference. And if you haven't heard them before, they're pretty good. Oh, you're fine. And I think Helmick will be teaching the Friday session. And the Friday session is an all-day session on literally beginner to intermediate automation of your scripts. So, tonight, and I do have a lot of demos, so hopefully everything works fine. Demo guides will hate me, I know this, so I'm gonna expect about half my demos to break, even though they worked perfectly this morning, yesterday evening, and this afternoon. We're gonna talk about air handling, and everything you did and didn't want to know about air handling. Well, almost. Because if we actually did talk about everything about air handling, we'd be here for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. Because there is a ton of stuff to know. And if we try to do all that, your heads would be sore at the end of the night.
I thought you were going to say days.
Days? If it took me that many days to explain air handling, we'd be in trouble. Since this question has come up before, just to get this out of the way, what environment we're running this all in. I got a Server 2016 domain controller, Server 2016 core, and my Windows 10 box. Those are the only two boxes that are going to be used in this demo, and the domain controller is going to be used very, very little. My domain was built with Autolab, if you're not familiar with that, for building a test environment on one of your own machines automatically without having to interact with it. Go ahead and check it out. It's released by Jason Helmick. They are going to be releasing a new product eventually. This one's technically depreciated, but you can go there, follow instructions. You'll set up a domain controller, a server, a Windows 10 box automatically for you in Hyper-V. You don't have to do anything. You destroy it, rebuild. So, with that, let's talk about what we're actually going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the two types of errors, terminating, and of course, non-terminating. And then we're going to go over some basic error handling. And in order to do this basic error handling, we need to talk about automatic variables, error action, error variable. And then we'll obviously have some demos so you can actually see all this in action, how this works, and how you can use this. If we have time, we'll see. And if not, we'll do this another time. We'll get into some advanced error handling. Some more automatic variables that you kind of use in that situation. And then debugging, both local and remote. So it is possible with Windows PowerShell 5 to connect into another computer running a script without connecting to that other computer and debug it remotely and find out why it failed. And you can find out what line it actually is stuck at or what chunk of code is running during that time frame. So if you're like, well, this script is taking forever, why is it doing? I'll show you a way that you can actually see the exact chunk that's causing you your grief. So we'll see if we can get there. So automatic variables. There's a couple of very important ones we need to get out of the way first. Dollar sign error. Anyone use that before? Familiar with it? I know Jake does. So dollar sign error is a unique object in PowerShell. First off, it's a top-down array. So in PowerShell, normally when you have an array object and you add a new object to that array, it goes to the end of your array. With your error object, it goes to the very front of the line, every new object. So normally when you're working with array, if you have 2 items, you would call array 1. That gets you your newest item. In this case, you'd go error 0 to get your newest item. So just kind of remember that, because that's a little trick of it if you're not familiar with that. And then the next one here, the question mark. And that's actually a variable in PowerShell, if you didn't know that. It's a Boolean, and it basically tells you, did the command that just ran previous to this, did it run successfully or not? This is useful and important, but there's some caveats to know about this. It's not foolproof. It can be tricked. And I'll show you a way that it can be tricked where it thinks the command ran successfully, but you actually received an error. Last exit code. Last exit code, if your script provides it, or if you're working with an external binary file, will give you the exit code that Windows received. So if you're running an installer and your installer gives you an exit code of 241059, and that's its error code for missing a file, you can grab that if you initiated that run through PowerShell. Or if you have a script that returns multiple exit codes, depending on the condition of the script, you can also grab that here. Again, these are all automatic. You don't have to do a thing. PowerShell is automatically populating these variables for you to use as you go on through things. PS item. PS item was introduced in PowerShell 3, and it's equivalent to $_. Just an easier way to use it. $_, if you're not familiar, is the variable that you use to indicate the current item in the pipeline. So if you're dealing with a pipeline of for each object, something like that, you can reference it either through PS item or $_. Same thing. So if you see either one in a script, know they can be interchanged. And if you want more information on PS item and how you can use this, because it's very extensive, there's a lot you can go over. Kevin Marquette has a very good article, and it's called Everything You Ever Want to Know About Exceptions. Really, his article is everything you ever want to know about PS item, because 90% of the article was about how you could use PS item to help you further enhance your debugging. Error action and scripts. Error action scripts is a unique thing. It's provided to you automatically through commandlets, and it's provided to you through advanced functions in PowerShell. Now, when I say advanced functions, I think Jake covered on this last time. Jake or Matt, one of you two covered on this. The difference between advanced and simple functions. Does anyone remember that? So an advanced function, huh?
Vaguely.
Vaguely?
It sounds smart, so I'm going to take credit for it.
There you go.
Fair enough. So an advanced function is like a normal function, like you have function test, right host, hello. Except that you add commandlet binding to the top of your function. By adding commandlet binding, you get all these other functionality. And one of these functionalities is error action that then gets added into your command automatically. And what's nice, you don't have to do anything. It's free. You don't have to write code for it. And all these abilities come into your function automatically that you write. So there's multiple states that error action could take, and I do have a link at the bottom of the slide as well. Again, all available on our GitHub page already. So if you want to read some more documentation from Microsoft, it's all there. So continue. This is its default state. It will run through, display the error, and continue on. Ignore. It's basically, it says, if you tell to ignore, this is important. the error is not added to your error automatic variable. You don't see an error message. It goes on. Your error is not logged anywhere. If you use ignore, you're playing with fire, and if there's errors that happen in your environment, that's your own fault. Don't go blaming anyone that the code messed up. You screwed yourself. Inquire. This one you would only use if you're doing an interactive shell. Because inquire is exactly that. It's going to ask you, what do I do? Do I stop? Do I continue? Do I just ignore this? What? And it's going to prompt you. If you throw that in your script that's supposed to run as a scheduled task, and that comes up, it's never going to finish. It's going to error right there.
That's something you probably use more if you're debugging.
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, we're,
Debugging, interactive script.
Right.
Yeah, you're never gonna, if you use that, again, like ignore, you're doing that damage to yourself. Silently continue. This is another one. You could use this one quite a bit, and there's certain reasons why you would want to. It suppresses error message, but it does log it to your error automatic variable. So you can go back and audit your error history still. You're not losing it. However, if you use this, you can manipulate your try catches, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then stop. It's just gonna stop what it's doing. That may also terminate your script, depending on how you're handling it. If you're not handling your error in a try catch, it may cause your script to exit out. And then suspend. This is only going to work in PowerShell workflows. And workflows is only available in Windows PowerShell 3 through 5. It's not available in 6. So you're probably not going to use this a lot. If you're not already using it, you're probably not. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to suspend that workflow and then pick it back up after you've investigated what's wrong with it.
why did they do away with workflows?
Because workflows is a Windows specific thing.
Okay.
It's not a PowerShell thing. It's a component built into Windows itself. And so since PowerShell 6 and above is open source, it can't rely on any specific Windows compatibility in Windows specific functions.
All right.
That's why. There's talk about making an open source version of workflow, but that's gonna be a ways away. That probably won't be till 7,
Okay.
when we ever get there. So besides error action, there's also information action and warning action. And all those parameters, continue, stop, silently continue, those apply to those as well. So you can kind of trick your traps and your tries and all your other error handling with your information and warning action as well. It's a little buggier. You don't necessarily want to do that unless you're trying to do something specific, but it is possible. But it's just also there.
Are there like system and environment variables that log like your warnings or the information output, kind of like $% error?
No, there aren't default ones, but you can, and I'll show you this, you can specify to save your warning and your information data to a variable. So it is possible to do that. But by default, no, error is kind of the only one that automatically logs everything. Again, if you throw like a start transcript at the beginning of your script, though, that will capture all that.
Is that the trap in particular you're referring to?
For the,
Catching certain errors?
well, you could use that for your trap, for your try. So like if you're in a try catch and you did information action stop, that would actually trigger the catch statement, even though no error actually came up. Because throwing that stop makes it a terminating error.
Sure.
So be careful with that. You can do it, but you shouldn't do it just because you can. Yeah, I covered that right there. So let me switch this over to the demo screen here. Just a second. And hopefully this is still loaded. There we go. All right. And hopefully the demo works. Before I start here, any questions, comments? No? Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and clear the error array, just to make sure my system's clean, because last thing you need is things. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and generate an error, because I need an error in order to start doing all this stuff. So, I'm generating a terminating error by looking for non-existent item. And now if we look at the error array, which I said is that automatically generated array, I have my item here. And this is the red text that we've all seen. I've seen this countless number of times, unintentionally sometimes, and sometimes intentionally trying to break something. So I'm going to create that new error. And remember how I said error is a top-down array? If we look at that content again, notice that new error is on top. It's element 0 of that array. So just proving what I said, just to make sure that I'm not lying to you. Since error is an array, we can access it as we would any array object. Now, get member, which is a command that most of us should probably be familiar with. If you're not, use it, it's useful. It'll help you explore what is already available to you in your variables and your objects. If we look at this, we see that this is an error record type. It's not a standard array, it's a specific object type. But when we do this, we see all these properties and methods available to us here. And some of these are like, well, okay, that's great and all, but what are they really doing? Let me ask this. Are most of you familiar with reading like through this get member data here? No? Okay, so in that case, let me do this here then. So when you do the get member, you get 3 default columns. You get your name, which you know what your name is, your type, so is it a method, property, script property, etc. But under definition, that's going to give you your biggest clue as to what is in your object here. Notice that only a few of these are string or bool. So like fully qualified error ID is a string. So when I look at that property, I know I'm going to get a string object there. But if I look at exception, it says system.exception, which means I have another object underneath that property, which means I might have more properties, more methods, more strings, more, more objects even to nest down through. So when you're looking at this, you can use this right here to help you start looking at what can I help? Now this works against more stuff than just the error objects. You can use this for any of the objects, whether it's a custom object you create, or you get an unknown, script from a vendor, and it's giving you all this crazy output, and you're like, what's really going on behind the scenes? You can use get member to kind of dive in a little bit more. And you can dive in a little bit more if you did error dot, let's have one with fully qualified error ID. I do error dot fully qualified error ID. And that would give me the string object back.
Can you use the select star? Will work the same way or no?
Well, select star will get you the properties. It will get you the properties of all these in like the string format.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to dive deeper into them,
Sure.
you'll need to do them kind of one by one here. And so here, I literally I invoked the method toString to get a simplified error message. This might be something you use more in your logging. Or if you get an error, be like, what is really going on here? Error.toString cannot find path because it does not exist. Looks a lot less intimidating than that blob of red at the top. But you can continue on. Again, remember, I said this is an object. I want to see what the target object is of this command, of this error. So if you're running a script, let's say a large CSV file against multiple user accounts, against multiple computer objects, and you get this sea of red, you don't want to have to sit there and scroll up through that sea of red and say, this computer failed, this computer failed, this computer failed. You can do error.target object. Export that out to a CSV. All of a sudden you have your list of computers or 80 objects or whatever, that produce an error. And you could continue doing it, you know, with other things like what the actual error was. That will help simplify your life. You're not sitting there trying to dig through this sea of red. And the other thing about that is that might scroll off the screen off your buffer, which means you might miss it. And if you want, if you we look at the category info, that gives us an object representation of this error that's a little bit clearer to read as well. So as you see, we can continue diving down through these different properties of this error object to read it. And this helps us get a little more clear picture of what's going on. It's an object not found. The command was get item. It's a not found exception. And it was that file. I know exactly what happened here. There's no question. Now, remember I said we're dealing with objects, not strings, and when we looked at up above at the get member, this looks like a string, right? But remember, PowerShell, we're always dealing with objects of some sort. So I took that error 0 exception, piped it to get member, and all of a sudden, we have all these new methods, properties, et cetera, to help us go through. If we continue on like that, we can get the full name of the exception. This, and when we get to try catches, I'll show you how this is very important. But this right here is how you can do very specifically targeted try-catch error handling, depending on the error. So if your error is item not found, I want to do this. If the error is access denied, I want to do this. If the error is, you know, cannot lock onto the file for whatever reason, you know, because it's open, I want to do this instead. And you could do all that by using a specific try-catch statement instead of trying to do like a if else, if else, if else, if else, if else. And what that allows you to do also is expand your try-catches out and add in that new exception as you go. So as you come up with a new exception, you add it to the list. And then it continues on. Another useful thing, you can get the trace of how you got to this error. In this case, excuse me, you see it says at script block, no file. That means it ran from the console. And then it ran this file, which is a start demo file, which is running this whole engine here. And then it ran back at the consoles where the actual error happened. But it shows you exactly how you got to that error. So if you're ever wondering, oh, okay, this errored out, why is it doing this? I don't understand why it's failing at this step. You can look at the error and be like, oh, that's how I got here. If you're ever looking back, especially at larger scripts, and try to figure out, how did this get called? So I'm just open up another PowerShell prompt here, because I want to show you that if I take this here, I'm just showing you that I get I'm just getting that script block no file line 1, which means it happened right at the console. So just so you can see the difference when you're running a script versus running right at the console. Any questions on that area before I flip it to the next area? Because all that is starts playing into the next portions as well. So they all kind of build on each other. So $10 question. Be used, to, like I said, to determine if the previous command completed successfully. So here I just did a test connection to localhost. I should get a true statement. That command completed successfully. I didn't get any errors. So here I have a demo file. In this demo file, I'm actually calling another demo file. This other demo file, it basically is get child item, or get item, non-existent file. And then I'm asking, what's the status of running that script? Well, I get an error, but my status is true. My command completed successfully. It's because my initial script that I'm running ahead isn't returning any exit codes, any doing any return of any errors. It's just executing. So it's successfully executing, but I'm still getting an error. So it's useful, but know that limitation, because if you rely on that, you could end up hurting yourself in the long run. Now, remember, it tells you if the previous command was successful. So I'm going to run some files again here. So I'm going to run the same file here that caused my error. But then I'm also going to run, after I get the status of if it failed or not, and it's going to say failed, I'm going to run the status again, and it's going to flip to true, because the command is what's my status. Well, it says false because I got an error. Great. But my status of false is true because it ran successfully. So if you use $sign question, keep in mind that you have to use it immediately after the command you want to test. If you don't use it immediately after, it's no good. So be careful of that. It's not one of those variables that you can use, run something, write something out to the screen, and then test if your function was successful. You have to run your function, test successful, then write out. And exit codes. I'm gonna guess probably most people are not using exit codes in their scripts when they finish up. I don't see it that often either. You?
No.
Oh, that's what I figured. It's rare, but it does exist, and you can do this in your codes as well. And it's literally just exit and then your code. So you can make up your own codes for your own scripts. So if someone comes to you and goes, the script you gave me failed. Well, what was the exit code? You can do that depending on the condition. But you can also do this, which is nice. You can run this combined with that $sign question mark. If you get any other exit code except 0, $sign question is always going to give you that it failed. Only exit code 0 will be successful. So just if you have some scripts that you find that have exit codes in them, just be careful of that as well. Because the code might run, but if they, for whatever reason, give you an exit code that's not 0, $sign question again, it's going to fail. Pulling up some exit codes here. So this just shows what I was talking about, the $sign question mark. It failed and it passed, depending on what the exit code was, even though there really was no error. All the script was doing was throwing me back an exit code. So be careful with these things. Automatic variables are powerful and useful for helping with your debugging of your scripts, but that can happen. So, error action. Now, so I'm going to clear up my error array again because I need to. Okay. So like I said, error action, continue, stop, silently continue that. I'm just going to go through a couple examples of what this kind of looks like, especially as you're doing stuff here. So a non-existent file, error action continue, we continue on. We're not stopping, we're not doing anything special. And if you look, my error is there. But again, like I said, with ignore, I got nothing in there. So again, be careful. This is what your inquiry looks like. This is why I don't want to use it in a non-interactive script. So be careful with that. Otherwise, you will screw up your own scripts. Just going to jump through some of these here. Silently continue. Again, if you've used these before, you're probably familiar with them, but this is how you start building up that concept of being able to debug where your script is going wrong. Because you can interject these into your longer scripts and get output on what failed where. Okay. And then error variable, so error is automatically logged. Like I said, $, error. But you may want to log something into a variable and use that down the road. You may want to run a command, let's say get AD user. Check what the status of that is. If you got an error, use that variable in an if statement later on to say, oh, this failed, I need to do something else down the road. If you have other commands in between there, your error that you want to use might not be the first element, might not be element 0 anymore. And you don't want to play a guessing game, especially if you're running multiple scripts or if you have a dynamic amount of users or objects. So what you can do, and this applies to both warning variable and information variable as well, you can give it a name to store that data in. And it will store that name, and notice, no question mark in front of it. Because you're not, if you put a question mark in it, then it's, a $sign, I'm sorry. If you put a $sign in front of it, it's going to use the data of that variable as the variable name. So just be a warning of that. So if I look at this, this is what's in my error variable right now. And that's what's in process error. It's just that one object. You know, it's not everything that was in my error variable, but I want to work with that specific object that I errored, which is the first command, not the second command that I ran. So that's where it'll be useful for you, especially if you think certain commands are going to fail on you more than others. So, and this is something that's kind of, if you don't use error variables, you're probably not going to know this. So I got a variable called custom error variable. It's just one object. However, if you put a plus in front of it, it will append to that variable. So you can continuously add. So if you're in a loop, a CSV loop, and you want only the errors from that loop logged in a specific variable, you can log them that way. So that way you maybe have a variable for loop 1, a variable for loop 2, a variable for loop 3. Not many people know about that one, actually. I found that out the hard way. So let's go here. But the big thing to remember about this, though, if you use, oh, things going through there. Wait till it stops here. If you use that custom error variable, it's a standard array. So your error variable, automatic variable, is a top-down array. Newest items added at element 0. Using a custom error variable, elements are added to the end of the array. So remember that when dealing with it, because you don't want to get those mixed up, otherwise potentially find yourself with an issue.
So going back to stop process, do you use that to like catch an error action that like in a catch block to catch a fatal error, or not a fatal, terminating error?
Yep.
And then the name of the process, like the parameter name, is that the name of the commandlet that would throw the error, or is that the, like, why do you specify the name?
Of the process?
Yeah.
So when, in this command specifically where I'm calling here, I'm doing a stop process name. You can do a name, you can do a process ID, you can do a process object. So if you want to do something, let's say like a get-process ID, then that'd be the process ID. And you could store that as an object, and then you could use that in the stop process, or you could, so you have options when you're doing these. So if you have, let's say, like one I use all the time actually at work, when Chrome is getting a little ambitious with the RAM it's using, get process Chrome, pipe, stop, process, force, or kill process. So that way it goes through, grabs all my film processes and kills them. So that's why I'm using name there. It was just, I wanted to make sure that wasn't a valid process ever on my system during the demo.
I thought you were using that to like handle the error, not generate an error. That's what I was confused.
No, I'm using that to generate the error.
Okay.
This is the error message itself right here.
That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, no, and actually, you're talking about try catch. So now we kind of have all those automatic variables and all that. Now we can do try catch. So I'm just loading up some, apparently those commandlets didn't load up properly. Awesome. 1 second. Told you the demo guides would hate me today.
Been going so well too.
1 second, I need to. Those commandlets should have loaded, but they didn't, so. File open. So, let's see, this is 156, okay. Oh, of course. 1 second. Just gotta edit my demo file real quick. Just started. This doesn't start at the beginning. There we go. Yeah, otherwise it would.
Start over.
Yeah, that would not have been good. Okay, good. I just had to make sure my support functions were loaded. I basically have functions that are generating terminating and non-terminating errors depending on various settings in the background. So, try catch. This is primarily the most used error handling system in PowerShell once you have kind of all those other things in place. So, try catch, this is the same in most other programming languages. It's literally going to try to run some code, and only if it hits a terminating error does it then jump down to catch. So you can have a non-terminating error in your try, and your catch will never run. So something like, if, I'm trying to remember what the non-terminating error, there's a,
Can you blow that up a little bit?
yes, I can.
Thank you.
Search mailbox?
Search me up. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. I don't know why I blinked for a second there. So anyways, yeah, so if you had search mailbox in there and there was, and it returned an error, your catch would never run down here. So we would never get this output of, we got here because there was an error. So in this case, and we instead would get, there was no error. A little misleading when we got an error. So in this case, I'm going to throw a terminating error out here because there was an error. And so this is just what I'm talking about, like this. We got the error, but we didn't get the message saying that we received it. And that's again because we have that non-terminating. So you can make a non-terminating error terminating. by adding error action stop. So again, all of your advanced functions, all of your commandlets get that functionality automatically. So by throwing error action stop on an error, that non-terminating error should have gone there. Why did that? Oh, it did. Non-terminating error. Should have gone to the right output. I don't know why it failed them. Again, demo gods are hating me. This one worked properly. Okay. So that non-terminating error, because we have that commandlet binding in the system, it worked. And all of a sudden, so if you have your get mailbox and you wanted to cause that error to happen when it can't find a user, you'd have to add that. If you don't, it's just going to continue on its merry way, which, as you know, with Exchange can cause a whole bunch of issues if you have wrong data in the wrong places. So let me get connected to my domain controller because we're actually going to take a look at get AD user for a second here, because I know that's a fun error that a lot of people have.
I was experiencing that the other day with the if else I was working on.
Yeah. Oop. So this session's going to end here real quick, so it can enter into or at least it should be. All right, looks like we're going to have to use the hard way. It's all right. Actually, let me try this first, real quick. Oh, there we go. All right. Let's not get the demo files. That would be perfect for me today. Oh, of course, because it has the wrong. 1 second, it has the wrong repo. Let's not do it.
We are not silently judging you, Paul.
Oh, you can silently judge me all you want. That's okay. It's like having people look over my shoulder while I code at work all the time, just on a much larger scale. I don't know why you didn't get the proper demo file. Of course. Oh. Start demo file. Okay. There we go. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this one, get AD user, and getting errors with this one. So here's just a look at one of my external script files here. I'll get all those files copied up before I run this. Let me make sure, because that's the last thing I need. All those files got over. That would be my luck. Okay, just making sure. So if you look at error action here, you would expect it to go on its merry way, like it encountered an error. or it did encounter an error, excuse me. So that way it should say found user account for Paul. That's what you'd expect, because by all definition, that's how it should respond. Get AD user and a few other commands, specific commands that rely on REST or commands that interact with a server-client relationship, don't necessarily respond that way. The reason being, the command is processed at the other end, at the server, not the client. And therefore, depending on how they program it, may not respect the error action very. This is why I brought my keyboard, just in case. I'm going to run this here. I got an error, even though I told it to sign and continue. Because, again, that server is not responding to it. So, and I wanted to bring this one up specifically because I know Get AD users used a lot, especially if you're doing identity management and all that. So there's a few ways you could get around this. You could wrap it in your standard try catch. You know, try to get my user, it fails, throw my catch out. No user account, we should get here. That's exactly what I want. You could also, and this is just, I wanted to focus on the Get AD user for a minute. You could use things like filters, because those are treated differently as well. No account was found, which is exactly what I wanted to see, because that if-else statement validated to false in this case, it actually worked. If I didn't have that filter there, it would fail. So just I wanted to show that real quick, that sometimes there are those commands that you encounter that aren't going to respect what you're expecting it to do. And when it doesn't do it, if you don't account for that, you may be in a little bit of trouble.
So it's best to almost store, that command in a variable and then run it on the variable.
That's what I've done.
Yeah, you can do it multiple ways, but
That's
just,
safer, right? I mean, 'cause then you're not gonna have to deal with
Yeah, and
something
it-
not working.
you're right, and it depends again on exactly what command it is and how that vendor deals with it. I just brought up that particular version because I know that that causes a lot of issue. There's actually a lot of people all over the forums that always talk about, why isn't error handling working with Get AD user? It's because they're not expecting it to, function differently than what they've been told, what they've been taught. So there's another method of error handling, which is a little bit older. It's back from the archaic PowerShell version 1 days. The trap statement. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's nice. It handles, but there's a few things to remember of trap. A, it only handles terminating errors, so like try catch. But it's the same chunk of code no matter where the error is at in the script. So like try catch, you can customize how it handles different things. Trap is going to run the same exact code every time. Not exactly flexible. But you can see it does work at least. So if you have an ancient system that's like PowerShell 1, trash it. If you can't, you can use trap. So in this case, I'm going to use a trap here. But we didn't get that line that says we experienced an error, even though I did continue on and continue on it. So just be warned about that. If you see a trap for whatever reason in your code, try to change that into a try catch. It might be a very old file, but just be aware that it's out there. It is a method you can use. So again, our standard try catch. Just showing here again that the same trap is called every single time. Not really getting too much use out of it. But here we can, depending on each line, we can say, oh, I got something different. So they just kind of reinforce it. clicker. So, remember before when we looked at the error object and we looked at the specifically fully qualified ID of the error? We can use that in our catch statement here. So if you notice, this has actually two catch statements in this one try block. It's going to try to get a non-existent file. If it gets an I'm not found exception, it's going to give us one error. Otherwise, if it gets any other error, it's going to give us something else. Again, this gives you a little bit of branching in your error handling. So you're not doing the same action regardless of what error you're getting. Their error was item cannot be found. I'm not getting that second error, which is really nice. So, but here I just use a non-existent command in that item. Yeah, and here you see the error was not item could not be found exception. So, and that's useful, like I said, especially if you're dealing with mailboxes, AD objects, file systems. You know, depending on the error that you're getting back, you can customize your code and script to handle those various situations.
Would you suggest using both, you know, write output, or write error for that matter?
For when you get those errors?
Well, I guess my question is two-part. The difference
Mhm.
between write output and write error.
Okay.
When used within a script in particular to output to a screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Write output doesn't always do it unless maybe it's commandlet binding you need to have on top of the script. I'm trying to think.
Write output sends it out to the default stream, usually stream, I think it's 0. So that's why sometimes I've seen certain commands when interacting with them. AD commandlets, sometimes one I'm working right now with the HPE commandlets, where they do some formatting on the back end, which may cause your write output to stop functioning until you restart your shell. So I have seen that. So normally if you do like if you get that, if you try doing something like a write host, and you get some output, that means something screwed with the formatting in the background. Command somewhere did that. So, but yes, by default I would use write output. If you're using PowerShell 5, you can use write host, because write host in PowerShell 5 is actually just an alias to write output. Yeah, finally. Previous to that, it was literally just outputting it. It was not capturable in any streams, so you couldn't use it for formatting, capturing it to a variable, using it later on down the line. 5 and plus you can. Write error, it's going to write out an error string to the screen, but it's not going to give you too much functionality unless you're filling in all the parameters under your write error. And it may give you more confusing than you want, because it'll give you usually the line above it that, you know, where you did that write error. So if you want to do something like notifying of an error, maybe look into like a logging function of some sort, you know, where it's not necessarily using write output, but maybe it's outputting to a file and the screen. So in case it doesn't hit the screen to let someone know, it's at least against that file to let you do something.
Right. So the same, you know, part 2 of that,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to writing your own, hey, this is what is going wrong, you know, to additionally, you know, add the $_ that gives the actual error, just in case, you know, hey, I wanted to catch this is what I think it's doing, but this is what it's actually returning.
Right. Yep. And I think I have something in a second here where it chooses the $_ or $PS item. Again, they're interchangeable, so you can use either one. But actually, that's actually right here. So just like Dan was saying here, so here I'm going to try to get a process it's an invalid process. That way I know it's never going to be in my system. So I don't ever get surprised. And I'm going to write out PSIM.toString. Cannot find a process name invalid process code. Now, again, $$ PS item, $underscore, that's the current object in the pipeline. That's equivalent right now to $error bracket 0. It has all the same properties, all the same methods, all the same, every object's underneath it that you can expose and use. So I could run a script stack trace. I can get this error message, which I'm doing right here, through toString. I can get all those things I did with the error variable earlier on, right here. And that could be useful because then you can see what line did I hit this error at? What called this? How did I get here? Again, it's taking those error variables, that basic concept, adding inside a new layer of your try-catch to understand fully where we're going. And here I'm just doing it with $underscore prove that $PS item $underscore did the same thing.
Would you suggest that it's good practice to kind of do both? Like, hey, this is what I think is happening if it does error, and then like a semicolon, the actual error. Like, just to kind of get in the habit of kind of using both.
Yeah.
So that
Well, you
both together, I mean.
yeah, and you want to do that especially as you're writing out a script, because you might throw, say, I got an error, colon, here's the error. And you could go out down to that fully qualified error ID, and then you could start utilizing that in your try-catches then. And that's how you catch more errors to throw and expand out your try-catch blocks. So that way you're doing specific catches for those errors you're encountering as your script goes. Because you're not going to be able to account for all those errors the first time you're running your script. That's going to be second, third, fourth time through that you're running. So that's the try-catch stuff, which is the simple, it's the most commonly used, like I said, of the error handling and that in PowerShell. Any questions on try-catch? Anything else? Yes.
So like, let's say I'm working with a commandlet where I have some idea what like the error message might be, but I don't want to write, 5 different try-catch blocks for slightly different errors that might have a similar root cause. I don't think this is the right way to do it, but like the last time it came up, I just ended up doing like a match on the text of the error message I caught in the catch block.
Okay.
Is that considered kind of going against the grain of what you're supposed to do?
So you did a match on the error message, and what did you do with it after that then? Just
basically, it was like, it was at a previous job, so I can't remember the details, but it was like,
Yeah.
there were like 2 or 3 related errors with like, either my coworkers didn't know what domain to enter, or like 3 or 4 different
Yeah.
things where the user is clearly at fault. And then like 1 or 2 things where it was probably Microsoft's fault, so it's like, okay, we're gonna try and filter these related things with one conditional statement rather than splitting it into, 3 different catch statements with a specific data type.
Yep.
It was the other thing I was trying to avoid.
no, that's perfectly fine, because there might be times when you want to do those specific catches, but there are other times where what you're doing to make it easier for the person running the script to understand what's going on is perfectly fine. And that's the beauty. It allows you to be as flexible or as stiff as you want with this. Now, that's the error handling part. Now, what if you don't know where your error is happening at? You can use what's called the debug method. So if you've done any standard programming, you're probably familiar with debugging code in that. This portion, unfortunately, couldn't be automated because of PID processes and that. So, excuse my typing with my back to you. I'm going to restart the shell so it's not black here. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, with PowerShell 3 and above, I had to stop myself for a second there, you get various debugging utilities. In this case, we get what's called breakpoints. These breakpoints allow us to stop a script in execution depending on the various conditions. So I'm going to pull up just a simple, really just a really simple, ugly demo script here. And when I say ugly, I mean it's literally setting a variable a couple times and running one command. Okay, that's my script. Simple. But I want to break my script. I want to stop and be able to interact with my script whenever, let's say, the data variable changes. If you weren't using debugging, you'd have to, pause, stop the script, or break the script up, to run it every time. Well, thankfully, Microsoft thought of these things here, and you have the breakpoints. I'm not going to go over how you can add these breakpoints through a GUI because that changes depending on what IDE you're using. However, the shell is universal. So we're going to do this here. So I'm going to add a breakpoint to my script, debug demo, which is that stupid ugly script I showed you, anytime the variable data changes. So I got that added now. And now if I run my debug demo script, data changed, so therefore it stopped here. I can now see what's running in the process. I can see what the values of my various variables are. I can invoke a function that's in my script to see why it's breaking, where it's breaking. So if I do that, I type exit, it changed the variable again. So now I can see it. There's my variable again. It changed.
Paul, that would have helped me about 15 minutes ago very immensely. You're late. No, that's pretty dope.
So that does that, right? So I'm going to remove my I'm going to remove my breakpoints here. When I set a new one here, instead of on a variable change, right? I keep getting an error message that my script keeps breaking. My stupid dumb script keeps breaking around line 3. Okay. Well, guess what? My debug demo is going to run. And notice, when I hit line 3, I am now in my debugger again. And I can see what all my data is. So if we look in here, line 3, which would be this line here, before it executes, dump down to the debugger. Data equals test. And if I were to exit here, it would continue to execute the rest of the script. So this is also useful if you're like, well, this variable should be this at this point. I need to figure out why it's not getting there. You can set that data right now. So if I go here, I can update that variable live. And I can exit, and now that I exit, the script will continue executing. So you could do that, again, with lines, with variable change, but you could also do that on a command. So if you have a command that runs, and you're like, well, every time this command runs, something breaks. I wonder why. I think I have it at, the command is, yep, get item. So I add that breakpoint in here. Before get item C executes, it dumped down to the debugger so I can see it. So I can now, if I spell my variable right, my variable is wonder, which it should be at this point. So you can do that while you're working with your scripts, and that's useful. Again, it could be as long and as complex it is, anytime any of those conditions are met, and you can have multiple conditions if you want. You could say, I want to debug at line 2, and I want to debug when get item runs. Another thing you can do, and this is, so there's two key words here. There's exit and quit. Exit out of the current debug session instance and allows the script to continue running. Quits out of the entire script. So if you have something that happens after that line that you're debugging, that won't execute. So just remember the difference kind of between the two. Exit, if you do quit, or exit, excuse me, you may end up back in the debug session, especially if you're in a loop. So I'll go ahead and exit out of here. Now, this is another thing that you can do. If you are running Windows PowerShell 5 or above, in your code itself, you can add wait debugger. So let me remove these breakpoints here. And wherever you throw in wait debugger, it will dump you into a debug menu there. So you don't have to write a condition. If you're like halfway down the script, I want to do this, I don't care what, just, you can do it.
Wait, so it stores your breakpoints into memory?
No, wait debug will throw you into debugger wherever you put it
I'm
at.
talking about prior to that, like you had to remove your breakpoints.
Oh yeah, all your breakpoints are stored in RAM. So you can run your script multiple times over in this shell. So if I close this shell and open up a new one, my breakpoints aren't going to be there. So just remember that you. But if you use wait debugger, since you're putting that in your actual code, like if you want to debug at this point and come back later and remember this is where you want to debug, you can add wait debugger. Again, Windows PowerShell 5 or above, it'll dump you into your debugger without having, and you can be in a brand new shell, different computer, whatever. So that's all well and good. But what if you have a scheduled task running on a back-end computer that you can't get to an interactive shell for? That's not useful at all, is it? Because you can't do any of that, right? So I need to enter in to my PS session here. One second here. So enter PS session. I got to actually do this in two different shells here, so one moment here. Dot 3.10. No. It'd help if I'm not in. All right. So here I'm in my domain controller because why not? I don't think. I don't think I wrote this down last. I thought I wrote this down. So apparently not. Great. Yep. Okay. Oh, we'll do this live. Apparently my notes didn't save from yesterday again. Demo guys don't like me. So here we're going to do a quick loop here. Oh, so if you want to do remote debugging, the one thing you're going to need is the process ID. So, and that's an automatic variable, sing a theme here tonight, of PIN. So in this case, my PowerShell session ID is 5904. So I'm gonna do a quick loop here. Right host, we're gonna do this test. Oh, missing my mouth. Okay, so this is gonna run on this server, and we're just gonna pretend like this was a scheduled task running in the background that we have no idea what's going on with it. And we get a report that it errored out. So I'm gonna remote into this server just because remoting locally is disabled on my system. You could do this from your local system to the remote server. You don't have to do it this way. So I'm going to enter what's called the enter PS host process. So again, I need that PID 5904. And what this does, this attaches my console now here to that other remote console. So now I can get the run spaces. So in this case, there's 2 run spaces running. And if you're not familiar with PowerShell run spaces, it's basically the threads that are running within that specific process. And so it's always going to be sequential on how they're spun up. So in this case, ID1 is that other process which is running a script, and 2 is the one I'm in running right now. So if I go in here, I am now debugging that other shell. And just to prove a point here, I'm going to go right here. Notice it's paused. It's not outputting anything else. And if in here, if you go type L, this is the code chunk that it stopped at while debugging. So if your code on the backend server has stopped for whatever reason, you can find out exactly what it is just by using L. And that asterisk right there on line 2, that's the exact piece of code that's running when the debugger attached. So you can find out what's running back into a second computer you might not even have access to, as long as you can remote to it.
How did you find out what to log in for the PS host process, the ID?
The ID, that ID of the 5904,
Yeah.
that's the process ID of the other shell. So you can get, you can use get process, you can use a task manager, you can use any other method to get that process. So there's multiple ways to get it.
PowerShell is running and get that process ID, connect to
Right.
that process ID, and start debugging.
Right, so let's say you have a PowerShell process running as a specific service account, for that specific task, that's that process ID you would get them. So that process ID is gonna change every time. It's, so if you look in Task Manager, you have that ID column, that's what that is the PIN. So,
So you obviously have to know what server it's running on. And then
Right.
from there, you can just enter, or you do have to enter PS session first to that terminal,
well, yeah,
and then find out what the host process is.
Yep. And again, you could find that out in multiple different ways. You can, get process and all that. I just did it the quick way so I knew. You can even have, if you knew you might have to do that, have your script when it starts logging stuff at the very start of the log. What's its PID? So that way you don't even have to go to the process. You can just look at your log files to see that. But you do this, now you can do all of your error troubleshooting right here without having to log into that error server fully. You do it remotely, which is nice. So that's, and then of course you have to exit out. And this code is not going to continue running until I exit out of here. So.
Can you go over again what the L commands did?
Is that
Which
like a
one?
list?
L.
The L command, The L command is basically outputting here what chunk of code is running
Okay.
at the time. And it's gonna give you the asterisk against the exact line that's running at the time the debugger attached to it.
Is that an alias to something, or is it just L?
No, that's just a debug command, it's just L.
And then where does like standard error and standard out now go to this run space as well?
Yep.
Okay.
And so everything that you run in here is running in this run space. So all your functions, commandlets, snap-ins,
Can you kill and restart this process then?
you would want to kill, if you kill and restart the process, you know, that's gonna kill your debug session. You don't wanna do it from within the session, you wanna do that, you know, outside of the session. But this way you can see what is airing out, you know. And again, because I'm in a debug session, I can, you know, check on my variables, I can check, you know, so if I have loops.
You can finish.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So from within this debug session, can you do like a git command or something to know what you all have available?
Oh, yeah, so you can, so you have everything that shell has access to. And I actually just, so if I do, so again, the variables as well. So, you know, flag is false, that's why that loop is continuing on.
That's because you're in that process ID, you have everything.
Right, I'm in that-
That process ID has access to.
Well, I'm not
it,
just in that
access.
process, I'm in that full
That sh-
session.
Yeah, the shell.
I'm in that shell session.
Mhm.
So-
Okay, yeah, I guess I was more curious, you know, like that L command, like I never would have known, you know,
Yeah.
without researching. Are there any other debug commands specific like that? And how would you find them?
Yep, the other debug commands are like step, next, exit, quit.
Next, would what, move on to the.
Okay, so the question mark, okay.
Question mark, you know, your standard old command, you know, help process. So step into, step over. You know, debugging is a whole other can of worms, but this at least gets you started to understand, these are my errors and this is how they're happening.
So if you type list out, it'll give you the entire list as well.
Well, list L,
Yeah, so it is an alias.
yeah.
Okay.
So you can have fun with that, just be careful, because remember, you're controlling a whole other shell. So with that, you can start having some fun and headaches of your own with error handling. 'Cause-
So you could, when you don't want to restart, you couldn't restart this process though, being in this, to keep its own process ID, but just restart the script or whatever.
You could, so you could, if you did, like say exit or quit, that would quit you out of the debugger, which would get you back to, you know, just into this server shell. It wouldn't be in that, necessarily that process IDs.
Go
shell.
back to your PS session, and
Right.
then that process ID would keep running until you killed that process ID.
Right, so
and
you would
started
then,
it
you
back
know,
up.
once you're back to your PS session, you could kill the process and restart the scheduled task or restart the service or whatever it be. Because now you can have services that run PowerShell scripts. You can convert PowerShell
And you can do
scripts
this
into
even
services.
without like a scheduled task where you're running a PowerShell command or
Yep.
a script that you're running. You can go into that process right on your machine and see
Exactly.
where it's at.
Exactly, it makes troubleshooting those
Yeah,
scheduled tasks
absolutely.
a little bit easier. Once you get the process down on how to get in there. And this remote processing stuff, again, Windows PowerShell 5 and above only. VF4, sorry, can't do it. Upgrade to 5. And with that, unless there's any more questions, enjoy. Thank you.
Very good.